The plate hit the wall before anyone understood what had happened. Vincent Moretti didn't shout. He simply swept his hand across the table, sent $40 of veal into the plaster, and looked at the shaking busboy like the boy was something stuck to his shoe. "Bring me the man who cooked that," he said, "and tell him to bring his apology with him." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. In that whole silent room, only one woman lifted her chin instead of lowering it. Before we go further, please subscribe to the channel and stay with this story all the way to the end. And leave a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled tonight. The rain had been falling on Brooklyn since 4 o'clock that afternoon, and Sophia Bennett had been on her feet since 6 that morning. She was 26 years old, and she had learned a long time ago that the body will do whatever you tell it to do if you stop asking it how it feels. She had worked a full shift as a legal interpreter that morning in a courthouse on Adams Street, sitting in a plastic chair beside a frightened woman from Palermo who did not understand what a plea agreement was, and Sophia had translated every word of it slowly, kindly twice until the woman's shoulders finally came down from around her ears. Then she had taken the train, changed her blouse in a bathroom that smelled like bleach, and clocked in at Belandi's on Court Street at 5:30 because the interpreting work paid in promises and the restaurant paid in cash. She had $411 in her checking account. Her rent was $1,100. It was the 14th of the month. "Sophia!" Danny Belandi, the manager, snapped his fingers twice at her from the service station. "Table 9 wants more bread." "Table 9 has had 4 baskets." "Then give them a 5th. "Danny, they're going to make themselves sick." "Then let them get sick with a smile on their face and a 20 on the table," Danny said. "That's the whole business. That's the entire business right there." She brought the bread. She always brought the bread. What she never did, and what Danny had written her up for twice, was pretend that she agreed. There was an old couple at table 2, a man named Abruzzo and his wife who came every Friday and split one entree and left exactly $3 because it was what they had. Danny hated them. Sophia gave them extra bread on purpose, and she gave them the good table by the window, and once, when Mrs. Abruzzo's hands shook too badly to cut her chicken. Sophia had cut it for her without being asked, and without saying a word about it afterward, because she understood that dignity is a thing you can steal from a person just by noticing out loud. That was the thing everyone knew about Sophia Bennett, the thing that got her promoted and got her fired and got her promoted again in a dozen different jobs across a dozen different years. She could not keep her mouth shut, not when it mattered. She had lost her parents at 17, a car on the Belt Parkway, on a wet night not so different from this one, and after that there had been nobody left in the world to tell her to be quiet and behave, so she had simply stopped. At 7:40 the front door opened and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Sophia was in the back running the ticket printer, and she knew before she turned around because she heard it. She heard the sound a restaurant makes when it stops being a restaurant and becomes a room full of people trying not to be looked at, forks going quiet. A conversation cut off in the middle of a word. Somewhere near the bar, a woman laughed and then swallowed the laugh like it was a bee. "Oh, God," said Rosa, the other server, standing very still with a tray in her hands. "Oh, God, oh, God." "What?" "Don't look." Sophia looked. He was tall and he wore a black coat that was still wet across the shoulders, and he did not shake it out and he did not apologize to anyone for anything. 2 men came in behind him. One of them stayed at the door. He did not sit. He did not take off his coat. He just stood there with his hands folded in front of him like a man at a funeral watching the street, and Sophia understood immediately that his job was to watch the street. Danny came around the podium so fast he nearly fell. "Mr. Moretti," he said, and his voice had gone up half an octave. "Mr. Moretti, what an honor, what an honor. Please, please, the corner. The corner is yours." "The corner is occupied," Vincent Moretti said. Sophia followed his eyes. The corner table was table 2, the Abruzzos. Mr. Abruzzo had a napkin tucked into his collar and was at that moment doing nothing more criminal than eating soup. "That's not a problem," Danny said. "That's not a problem at all. Give me 60 seconds. Rosa put her tray down. "He's going to move them," she whispered. "He's actually going to move them." "He's not," Sophia said. "He was." Danny went to table 2 with his hands already spread out in that apologetic way he had, and Sophia watched Mr. Abruzzo look up confused, and she watched Mrs. Abruzzo's hand go to her purse, because 80-year-old women in Brooklyn have been trained by life to believe that whenever a man in a suit approaches, the correct response is to reach for money. Sophia was moving before she decided to move. Danny, not now. Danny, they're eating. Sophia, I swear to God. They come every Friday, every single Friday for 11 years. Rosa, tell him. 11 years, Rosa said faintly. Danny turned around and his face was doing something Sophia had never seen it do. He was not angry. He was scared. That was the part that stayed with her later when she thought back on it. She had seen Danny Belandi angry 1,000 times, and anger she could handle anger was just noise. But she had never seen him look like a man standing on ice that was talking to him. You don't understand, Danny said very quietly. That man does not sit with his back to a door. Not ever. There are 2 tables in this room where a man can sit with his back to a wall, and one of them is under the air conditioning, and I am not going to be the guy who put Vincent Moretti under the air conditioning. Do you understand what I'm telling you? So tell him no. Danny laughed. It was a horrible little sound. Sweetheart, he said, nobody tells him no. And then Vincent Moretti simply walked past both of them, past the podium, past the Abruzzos, and sat down at the other wall table, the one Danny had been saving for a party of 6 at 8 o'clock, and he did it without a word, and everyone in the room understood that a decision had been made and that nobody had been consulted. Danny exhaled like a man who had been pardoned. Sophia, he said, take the table. Give it to Rosa. Rosa's crying in the walk-in. Then give it to Marco. Marco is 19 years old and he already dropped a tray tonight. Danny grabbed her elbow and then thought better of it and let go. Listen to me. Listen. You speak Italian. So does half of Court Street. You speak the real kind, the old kind, his mother's kind. Danny leaned in. He notices things like that. Just please, please be normal for 1 hour. Can you be normal for 1 hour? Can you do that for me? Sophia looked across the room at the man in the wet coat. He was not looking at the menu. He was not looking at his phone. He was sitting perfectly still with his hands on the table, and he was watching the room the way a man watches a chessboard. He has already won, and there was something in his face that she could not name and did not like. It was not cruelty. She had expected cruelty. It was worse than cruelty. It was boredom. I can be normal, she said. She was not normal for 4 minutes. Good evening, she said. Can I get you something to drink while you look? Water, sparkling or still. He didn't answer. He didn't look up. He was reading a text message, and Sophia stood there for 11 full seconds, which does not sound like a long time unless you are the one standing there. And then he said, without lifting his eyes, whichever one you'd bring a man who doesn't care. Then still, she said. Because caring is expensive, and you look like you're saving up. The other man at the table, the one with the shaved head and the shoulders, went absolutely rigid. Vincent Moretti looked up, and Sophia felt it, the thing that Danny had been so afraid of. It was not a threat. He did not narrow his eyes or lean forward or do any of the things men do in movies. He simply gave her his attention, all of it at once, and it was like standing in front of an open oven door. What's your name? He said. Sophia. Sophia what? Sophia who brings the water. The shaved head man said, Hey, in a low voice, and Vincent lifted one finger about an inch off the tablecloth, and the man stopped talking like someone had unplugged him. Bring the water, Sophia, Vincent said, and went back to his phone. She brought the water. She brought the bread. She recited the specials, and he interrupted her in the middle of the branzino to order the veal, and she wrote it down, and she went to the kitchen, and she stood at the pass with her hands flat on the steel for exactly 5 seconds, breathing the way she had taught herself to breathe at 17 in a hospital hallway. You okay? Marco asked. He was 19. He had a mother in Sunset Park and a little sister with asthma, and he had told Sophia both of those facts within 4 minutes of meeting her, because that was the kind of kid he was. I'm great, she said. He looked at you. People look at people, Marco. No, Marco said. He looked at you. The veal came up at 8:20. Marco ran it because Marco ran everything, because Marco was trying to prove something to a world that had not yet agreed to watch him. And Sophia was 2 tables away with a wine list in her hand when she heard it. The plate. It did not break the way plates break in movies. It hit the wall flat and slid down it and landed on the banquette, and the sound was less like a crash and more like a slap. And afterward, the room was so quiet that Sophia could hear the ice machine in the back. Marco stood there with his hand still shaped around a tray that wasn't there anymore. "I said medium," Vincent Moretti said. He hadn't raised his voice. That was the thing. That was the thing that made Sophia's whole body go cold. He said it the way you'd read a number off a receipt. "Bring me the man who cooked that, and tell him to bring his apology with him." "Sir?" Marco said. "Sir, I'm sorry, I'll take it back. I'm not talking to you. I'll take it back right now, sir." "I know you will," Vincent said. "You'll take it back and you'll bring me another one, and it'll be wrong too because the problem isn't you. Look at me. The problem isn't you. Do you understand nobody in this room thinks the problem is you?" And that Sophia would realize much later was the closest thing to kindness that anyone in the Moretti organization had said out loud in a year. But she did not hear it that way. Nobody heard it that way. What she heard was a man with a wet coat and a bodyguard humiliating a 19-year-old boy in front of 40 people, and what she saw was Marco's ears turning red, and what she felt was something old and hot climbing up out of her chest with its own opinions. Danny was already crossing the floor. "Mr. Moretti, please, I am so sorry, the kitchen is going to—" "Danny," Vincent said, "sit down or go away. You're making it worse." Yes, of course. And take the boy with you." Marco moved. Sophia caught his arm on the way past and felt him shaking and said very quietly, "Go to the walk-in. Count to 100. Don't cry where they can see you. They don't deserve it." And Marco nodded and went. And then Sophia turned around and did the thing that changed her entire life. She picked up the plate off the banquette. "You can't be in here," the shaved head man said. "I work here." "You can't be at this table right now." "I'm cleaning a plate off a seat," Sophia said, "which somebody has to do since the man who threw it apparently doesn't do that part." The whole restaurant heard it. She had not meant to say it loudly. That was the truth, and she told herself that truth for years afterward, that she had not meant to say it loudly. But there is a kind of quiet in a room where the noise has nowhere to hide, and every syllable of it went across that floor like a stone across ice. The shaved head man stood up. He was enormous. Sophia had known he was large, the way you know a parked truck is large in an abstract way, and then he was standing, and she understood the mathematics of it, and he took one step, and his hand closed around her wrist. "Tony," Vincent said. "She's got a mouth on her, Vin." Tony. And here is the part Sophia never told anyone, not for a long time. Her wrist did not hurt. He was not squeezing. He had taken her wrist the way you take a doorknob, without malice, with total ownership, and it was the ownership that did it. It was being handled. 26 years old, both parents in the ground, $1,100 a month in rent, $411 in the bank, 12 hours on her feet, and a man she had never met had reached out and taken hold of her body because her mouth had inconvenienced him. Something inside her simply stopped negotiating. She pulled her wrist free, and she looked at the floor and under her breath in the dialect her grandmother had used on tax collectors and cheap butchers. And one memorable priest, she said it. It is not a phrase that translates. The polite version, the one you would find in a dictionary, is something like a man who has been given everything and has grown nothing. The real version, the version her grandmother spat on the sidewalk in Bensonhurst in 1974, is considerably shorter and involves a comparison to a well-fed animal that has never once had to find its own food, and it carries in 3 words an accusation of cowardice, softness, inheritance, and shame. It was the worst thing she knew how to say. She said it to the floor and she turned to walk away, and she was already calculating how many days of rent she had just thrown into the wall along with the veal. Behind her, a chair moved. "Say that again." Sophia stopped. The room stopped. 40 people, 3 servers, 1 bartender, the entire kitchen crowded into the doorway, and the man at the door who had not sat down all night, and all of them stopped, and Sophia stood there with her back to Vincent Moretti, and understood in a clean and simple way that she had made a mistake she could not take back. "Say that again," Vincent said, "but this time look at me." She could have walked. That was the thing that haunted her later. The door was 11 steps away. Danny would have covered for her, or he would not have, and either way, she would have been on Court Street in the rain in 90 seconds with her life intact. She turned around. He was standing. He had not moved out from behind the table, and his hands were loose at his sides, and his face had done something Sophia could not process. The boredom was gone. It was gone so completely that it was hard to believe it had ever been there, and what had replaced it was so much more frightening, because what had replaced it was interest. "Sir," Danny said. "Sir, she's an idiot. She's a temp. She doesn't know what she's—" "Danny." Vincent didn't look away from her. "One more word and you and I are going to have a problem that lasts longer than tonight." Danny shut his mouth. Sophia's heart was going so hard she could feel it in her teeth. She thought about Marco in the walk-in counting to 100. She thought about Mrs. Abruzzo's hand going to her purse. She thought about her grandmother, 4'11", standing in a doorway on 72nd Street, with a wooden spoon saying they only get to be big if you agree to be small. She looked Vincent Moretti in the eye, and she said it again, louder, slower, with the grammar corrected and the vowels the way her grandmother made them, and she did not stumble on a single syllable. And when she got to the last word, she leaned into it just slightly, the way you lean into a nail. Somebody in the kitchen doorway said, "Madonna." Tony took a step, and Vincent put a hand flat on his chest without looking at him, and Tony stopped, and Vincent Moretti smiled. And it was not a smile that made any sense. It started at one corner of his mouth, and it went all the way up into his eyes. And then in front of 40 people who had spent the entire evening trying not to be noticed by him, the most feared man in New York laughed out loud. "Where'd you learn that?" he said. Sophia's mouth was so dry she had to make it work twice. "My grandmother." "Where was she from?" "Corleone, then Bensonhurst." "Yeah," Vincent said, and he was still smiling, and he shook his head slowly. "Yeah, no, that's Corleone. Nobody in Palermo says it like that. Palermo says it like they're apologizing while they say it." He looked at her. "You said it like she'd have said it." "You understood me." "Sophia," he said, and it landed on her like a hand on her shoulder, because she had never told him her last name, but she had told him her first, and he had kept it. "My mother spoke that dialect at me every single day of my life until she died. I understood you before you finished the first word." The room did not breathe. "Then you know what I called you?" Sophia said. "I know exactly what you called me." And Vincent Moretti tilted his head, and for 1 second, 1 single second, something moved behind his face that did not belong to a man who threw plates at walls. It was there, and then it was gone. "And nobody's called me anything in 9 years, he said. "You know what that's like, 9 years? Everybody in this city smiles at me. Everybody says yes. The mayor's chief of staff calls me sir, and a girl who makes, $2.25 an hour plus tips looks at me across a room and tells me the truth in my mother's language in front of my own driver with my hand still on the table." It wasn't a compliment. "I know," Vincent said. "That's why it's the first thing anybody's given me all year." Danny made a sound like a kettle. "Mr. Moretti, I want you to know that she is fired. She is fired as of this second. She is done. She will not be in this building tomorrow. I promise you." "Danny? I promise you on my mother's—" "Danny." Vincent finally turned his head, and Danny Belandi stopped talking so abruptly that his jaw clicked. "You're going to fire her." "Absolutely, immediately." "For what?" Danny blinked. For what she said to you." "She said it to me," Vincent said. "Not to you. It's not your insult, Danny. You didn't earn it." He looked back at Sophia. "You know what he was going to do tonight? He was going to move an 80-year-old man off a table so I could sit down. I didn't ask him to do that. He was going to do it because he decided that's what I wanted. And then for the rest of his life, he'd have told people that Vincent Moretti threw an old man out of a restaurant." Sophia said nothing. "That's how it works," Vincent said. Nobody ever tells me no, so everybody tells everybody else what I would have wanted. 20 years of that. You want to know how a monster gets built? That's how. 1,000 guys like Danny guessing. You threw a plate at a wall, Sophia said. Nobody guessed that. You did that. And there it was again, that flicker, that half second where the wall came down and something exhausted looked out. Yeah, Vincent said. I did. That kid is 19. I know how old he is. He has a sister with asthma. Then I hope he keeps this job, Vincent said, because his manager was about to fire the only person in the building who'd stand up for him. He picked his coat up off the back of the chair. Danny, she's not fired. Of course she's not. Say it again. She's not fired. Look at her when you say it. Danny looked at her. His face was the color of the tablecloth. You're not fired, he said. Good, Vincent said. Now the boy, Marco, where is he? He's in the walk-in, Sophia said, counting to 100. Why is he counting to 100? Because I told him not to cry where you could see him, she said. Because you don't deserve to see it. Tony inhaled. Vincent Moretti stood absolutely still for a long moment, and then he reached into his coat, and Sophia felt the whole room flinch 40 people at once, a wave of it, because that is what this city had been trained to expect, and what he took out was a billfold. He counted out $500 on the tablecloth. For the plate, he said. For the plaster, and for the boy, and I want you to give it to him yourself, because if I give it to him, it's a payoff, and if you give it to him, it's a tip. He put the billfold away. You understand the difference. I understand you think $500 fixes it. No, Vincent said. I think $500 is what I have. What fixes it is something I don't have, and you just said it out loud in front of my whole crew, so I'd appreciate it if you didn't make me say it twice. And then he did something that Sophia thought about for weeks afterward, lying awake in a fourth-floor walk-up with the radiator banging. He walked over to table 2. Mrs. Abruzzo shrank. Sophia saw it happen, saw the old woman go small in her chair, and Sophia started to move. And then Vincent Moretti crouched down beside the table, so that his eyes were lower than theirs, which is a thing that no man like that ever does, and he said something in Italian too quiet for the room to hear. Mr. Abruzzo's face changed. He laughed. He actually laughed a wet old man's laugh, and he grabbed Vincent's hand in both of his and shook it, and said something back, and Vincent nodded and stood up and said over his shoulder, Danny, their check, every Friday. For as long as they want to come here, put it on me. Yes, Mr. Moretti. And Danny, don't tell them it's me. Tell them the kitchen loves them. He walked to the door. Tony went ahead of him. The man who had stood by the door all night pulled it open, and the rain came in, and the whole restaurant was still holding its breath, and Vincent Moretti stopped and looked back across 40 silent people at a woman with a broken plate in her hands. Sophia, he said. What? You said I was given everything and grew nothing. I did. You want to know the funny part, Vincent Moretti said. I've been trying to grow something for 9 years, and every single person I pay tells me it's already beautiful. Then he left. The door closed, and the room came back to life all at once, 40 conversations detonating at the same instant. Rosa grabbing her arm. Danny sitting down on a chair like his legs had been taken away. The kitchen crew all talking over each other in 2 languages, and Sophia stood in the middle of it with $500 on the tablecloth beside her and her wrist still remembering a hand. It took her 40 minutes to stop shaking. She gave Marco the money at 11 o'clock in the alley, and she told him the kitchen had taken up a collection, and he cried anyway, and she let him because there was nobody left to see it. She swept the plaster. She reset table 2. She counted her tips, which came to $91, which was the best night she'd had in a month, because every single person in that dining room had watched her stand up to Vincent Moretti and had decided that was worth something. And at midnight, Danny caught her at the door with her coat already on. Sophia, I'm not apologizing. That's not what this is. He looked terrible. He looked like a man who had aged 4 years in an evening. Sit down. I have a train. Sit down, please. She sat. Danny Belandi put his hands flat on the bar and stared at them for a while, and then he said, You want to know why I was so scared tonight? You think it's because of who he is? It's not. I've served him twice before. He tips 25%, and he says thank you, and he's never once been a problem. He looked up. I was scared because of what happened this morning. What happened this morning? The building sold. Sophia went very still. 22 years my father had this place. 22 years and the landlord dies, and the estate dumps the whole block, and this morning at 9:15, my lawyer calls me and tells me it's done. It's closed all 6 buildings, one buyer. Danny laughed, and there was nothing in it at all. You want to know who owns the floor you're standing on, Sophia? You want to know who owns the walk-in? That kid was crying in, and the sign with my father's name on it. Sophia's mouth had stopped working. He didn't come here for the veal, Danny said. He came here to look at his building, and the first thing that happened when he walked in the door was that a girl who works for him called him a coward in his mother's language in front of his uncle's driver in a room he owns. His uncle's driver, Sophia said. Tony's his uncle's driver. Tony works for Richard Moretti, Danny said. Everybody knows that. And Richard Moretti is going to hear every word of what you said before that man's car gets to the bridge. Outside, the rain kept coming down on Court Street, and in a black car crossing Brooklyn, a man who had not laughed in 9 years was looking out the window at nothing, and beside him, Tony was already typing a message with 2 thumbs very carefully to somebody who had asked him to report absolutely everything. Sophia did not sleep that night. She sat on the edge of her bed in a 4th-floor walk up on 53rd Street, with her coat still on, and she watched the radiator bang, and every 20 minutes or so, she would say the words out loud again into the dark, the exact words, the way you press on a bruise to see if it still works. At 2 in the morning, she called Rosa. Did I get anyone killed? Sophia, it's 2. Did I get anyone killed? Rosa was quiet for a second, and Sophia could hear a television going somewhere behind her. He laughed, Rosa said. That's not an answer. Honey, I've lived in this neighborhood my whole life, Rosa said. My uncle used to drive a truck for those people, and I'm going to tell you the only thing anybody ever told me about that family that was worth knowing. You don't want them angry at you, she paused. But you really, really don't want them interested in you. Sophia hung up and did not sleep. Saturday morning, 9:40, she was back at the courthouse on Adams Street because the world does not stop just because a man laughed at you. The woman from Palermo was named Elena Ricci. She was 51 years old. She had been in the country for 19 months, and she was sitting in the same plastic chair in the same hallway with the same purse on her knees. And when Sophia sat down beside her, Elena grabbed her hand with both of hers like a woman going into surgery. They changed the lawyer, Elena said in Italian. What? They changed my lawyer. Friday, there was a phone call. The office called me at home. Elena, that's not how it works. You can't just change a public defender because someone calls. Then someone made it work, Elena said. The new lawyer's name was Marchetti. He wore a suit that cost more than Sophia's rent, and he shook her hand for exactly the right amount of time, and he said, You must be the interpreter. They tell me you're excellent. And Sophia said, Who's they? And Marchetti smiled without answering and went into the courtroom. Elena's charge was dropped in 11 minutes. 19 months of terror, a woman who had stopped sleeping, who had told Sophia in that hallway that she kept her documents in a plastic bag under the sink in case she had to run. And it took 11 minutes and a man in a good suit. And then it was over, and Elena Ricci stood in the hallway and cried so hard that a bailiff brought her a chair. Sophia found Marchetti at the elevator. Who paid you? Miss Bennett. You know my name. I know a lot of names, Marchetti said. It's the job. Who paid you? The elevator opened. Marchetti stepped in, and he held the door with one hand, and he looked at her with something that was almost sympathy. Nobody paid me, he said. Somebody asked me. There's a difference, and in about a week you're going to understand exactly how big a difference it is. Then the door closed. Saturday afternoon, 4:15. Sophia walked into Belandi's for her shift, and Danny was sitting at the bar with a stack of paper in front of him and a pen he wasn't using. Don't clock in, he said. Danny. I'm not firing you. Sit. She sat. He slid the top page across. That's the new lease, Danny said. Came by messenger at 10 this morning. Not email. Messenger. A kid on a bike with a leather envelope like it's 1962. He laughed. You want to guess the rent, Danny? Guess. I'm not going to guess. Same, Danny said. It's the same. Same rent my father paid in 2004. 20-year term. Fixed. There's a clause in there that says if the building's sold again, the lease survives. There's a clause that says he can't raise it for any reason except taxes. My lawyer read it 4 times and then called me back and asked me what I did for this guy. Danny's voice cracked on the last word, and he stopped and he put his hand over his mouth for a second. Danny, 22 years my father in this room, and every year of my life I'm waiting for the phone call that ends it. Every year. And last night a man throws a plate at my wall, and this morning he hands me my whole life back with a bow on it. Danny looked up at her and his eyes were red. So you tell me, what is that? Because I've been sitting here since 10 trying to figure out what that is, and I keep coming back to the same answer and I don't like it. What's the answer? It's a receipt, Danny said. He's showing you what he can do. He's not showing me. I'm the wall he's writing it on. Sophia sat very still. There's a page in the back, Danny said. Read the back page. She turned to the last page. It was not part of the lease. It was a single sheet of heavy paper with 3 lines on it. No letterhead, no signature. Monday, 11 o'clock. 400 Park Avenue, South 14th floor. Bring the grandmother's dialect. He wants to hire you, Danny said. He doesn't know anything about me. Sophia. Danny laughed again, that terrible little laugh he'd had all night. He knew you were an interpreter before you brought him the water. Monday morning, 10:58. Sophia had told herself 40 times that she was only going to say no in person because saying no on the phone was for people who could afford to be cowards, and she had told herself that lie so thoroughly that she almost believed it in the elevator. The 14th floor did not look like anything. That was the first thing that broke her brain. She had expected marble and men in coats. What she got was gray carpet, a reception desk, a woman with reading glasses, and a sign that said, Moretti Development Group, in letters so boring they were practically an apology. Miss Bennett, he's running 4 minutes late. Coffee. No, thank you. Water. No. You sure you look like you haven't slept? Sophia looked at her. Do you know who you work for? 26 years, the woman said pleasantly. His father hired me. Would you like the coffee or not? The office door opened at 11:04, and Vincent Moretti came out in a shirt with the sleeves rolled up and no jacket, and he looked so ordinary that Sophia felt cheated. Sophia. Mr. Moretti, Vincent. No, she said. He stopped, and then for the second time in 3 days he smiled, and it went all the way up into his eyes, and Sophia hated how much it changed his whole face. All right, he said. Come in, Miss Bennett. The office had a window and a table, and 11 cardboard boxes stacked against the wall, and nothing else. No art, no photographs. It looked like a man who had moved in that morning, except the boxes had dust on them. 9 years, Vincent said, following her eyes. I keep meaning to unpack. I'm not taking the job. I haven't offered it. I'm not taking it anyway. Sit down, Miss Bennett. I don't want to sit down. Then stand, Vincent said, and sat, which somehow made it worse. You know what I like about you 20 seconds in, and you've already told me no twice. Do you have any idea how much money I've spent trying to buy that from people? You bought Danny's building. I bought 6 buildings. You gave him a 20-year lease at 2004 rent. I gave all 6 of them 20-year leases, Vincent said. The bodega, the shoe repair, the dry cleaner, the 2 apartment buildings, and Danny. You want to know why? Because in 8 months, an LLC out of Delaware was going to buy that block and put up 42 luxury units, and every single one of those people would have been gone by Christmas. Mrs. Abruzzo lives in 4C Miss Bennett, 2nd building, rent stabilized. Do you know what happens to an 80-year-old woman when the stabilization gets bought out from under her? Sophia said nothing. She goes to Staten Island, Vincent said, to a daughter who doesn't want her, and then she dies in about 14 months because that's what happens, and nobody writes it down anywhere, and nobody's ever charged with anything. So you're the good guy. No, Vincent said. I'm the guy who paid $9 million for a block that'll never earn it back, which my board calls charity and my uncle calls weakness, and you called me a coward in front of my uncle's driver. And honest to God, Miss Bennett, out of the three of you, you're the only one I've thought about since Friday. Why? Because you were right. That stopped her. Sit down, Vincent said. Please. She sat. 11:12 in the morning. He talked for 6 minutes without stopping, and Sophia listened, and somewhere in the middle of it, her hand stopped shaking, which she resented. There were investors coming from Milan in 9 weeks. $400 million. A deal to convert 11 of the family's holdings into a legitimate development trust unions, community boards, the whole grinding legal machinery of it, and the Milan people spoke English, all of them perfectly, and that was exactly the problem. They speak English at me, Vincent said, and then they speak Italian to each other in the room in front of me because they've decided I'm a Brooklyn boy with a name and a checkbook. And they're not wrong about the checkbook. You speak Italian. I speak my mother's Italian, Vincent said, which to a man from Milan sounds like a farmer talking. They hear it, and they smile at me like I'm a dog that learned a trick. So I sit there, and I nod, and I lose 11% of every deal I've ever made across a table from those people because they know what I'm worth and I don't know what they're saying. So hire an interpreter. I've hired 9. And they all worked for somebody else within a month, Vincent said flatly. Every one. 2 of them my uncle bought. One of them a Milan bank bought before he ever landed. The rest just got scared and quit, and I don't blame them. He leaned back. You know what an interpreter is in a room like that, Miss Bennett. The interpreter is the only person who hears everything. Both sides, all of it. In that room, the interpreter is the most powerful person in the building and gets paid the least, which is a design flaw somebody should have fixed 100 years ago. And you think I won't sell you out? I think you couldn't sell me out if you tried, Vincent said. You're constitutionally incapable of shutting up. You proved it in a room where everybody in the tri-state area knew better. That's not loyalty. That's a defect. But it's the exact defect I need. That's the worst compliment I've ever gotten. It's not a compliment, Vincent said. It's a job. $240,000 a year on the books with a W-2, and health insurance and a dental plan you'll never use because you're 26. 9-week contract renewable, and if you walk on day 1, you keep the first month. Sophia's ears actually rang. $240,000. She thought about $411. She thought about $1,100 on the 14th. She thought about being 17 in a hospital hallway learning to breathe. And she stood up. No, she said. Vincent didn't move. Say more. No, I don't have to say more. That's the whole thing about no. It's the only word in English that doesn't need a reason. Humor me, because I watched you throw a plate at a 19-year-old, Sophia said. That's my reason. You want to talk about Mrs. Abruzzo's lease and Milan and 11% fine. That's all very moving. But I was standing 8 feet away when you decided that a boy's whole night was worth less than your veal. And I'm not going to spend 9 weeks pretending I didn't see it because you offered me a dental plan. The room got extremely quiet. You're right, Vincent said. Don't. I'm not managing you. You're right. I did that. He stood up and walked to the window and stood there with his back to her, and when he spoke again, his voice had changed in a way that Sophia did not have a category for. You want to know why I threw it? I don't care why. Because it was cold, Vincent said. The veal was cold. It was cold because it sat in the window for 6 minutes, and it sat in the window for 6 minutes because your manager was in the back on the phone with a lawyer finding out he'd lost his building and the kid didn't want to run it out cold, and he ran it anyway because he's 19, and he was scared of me. He turned around. So a boy who did nothing wrong brought me a plate of somebody else's fear, and I threw it at a wall, which means I taught every person in that room that the story about me is true. I spend $9 million to keep an old woman in her apartment, and then I spend 4 seconds proving I'm exactly what they say I am. Then why did you do it? Because I was tired, Vincent said. That's the whole answer. It's not a good one. Sophia stood there with her hand on the back of the chair. That's not an excuse. I didn't offer it as one, Vincent said. You asked me why. Everybody else in my life would have told you it was strategy, that I did it on purpose to send a message that there's a chess game happening. There's no chess game. I was tired and I broke a plate, and a kid cried in a walk-in refrigerator. That's the entire truth, and I've never said it out loud before, and I'm not going to say it twice. 11:26 in the morning. Sophia sat back down. She was furious with herself the entire way down. 6 months, Vincent said. Then it's yours. What is the foundation? He said, and for the first time he sounded almost embarrassed. It's in one of those boxes. It's been in one of those boxes for 4 years. Legal and cultural services for immigrants in the 5 boroughs. Interpreters in courtrooms, free real ones, not a guy with an app. Elena Ricci sat in a hallway for 19 months, Miss Bennett, because nobody in that building could tell the difference between a woman who committed fraud and a woman who signed a lease she couldn't read. Sophia went cold all over. How do you know that name? Because I asked. You had me investigated. I had you looked at, Vincent said. Friday night from the car. It took 90 minutes. I'm not going to apologize for it, and I'm not going to lie about it because you'd hear the lie. You got Marchetti. I asked Marchetti. You didn't do that for her, Sophia said, and her voice was shaking now, and she couldn't stop it. Don't stand there and tell me you did that for her. You did it so I'd walk in this door on Monday, and you'd already own 11 minutes of my gratitude. Vincent looked at her for a long moment. Both, he said. What? Both things are true, he said. That's what nobody tells you. I did it because a woman was going to lose 19 months of her life over paperwork, and I did it because I wanted you to see what I can do with a phone call, and both of those happened at the same time in the same head. You want me to pick one so you can decide what I am. I'm not going to. I've been both my whole life. Sophia sat there and hated him and did not leave. 9 weeks, Vincent said. Then you walk or you don't. I want 3 things. Name them. Marco. He goes to school. You pay for it, and you never tell him it's you, and I don't ever want to hear you mention his name again, as long as you live. Done. Elena Ricci's paperwork. Not a favor. Not a phone call. A real lawyer for the real thing all the way through, and if it takes 2 years, it takes 2 years. Done. And the third one you're not going to like. Try me. If I find out you're what they say you are, Sophia said, I walk out the door and I say so, out loud, to anybody who asks, and you don't get to do anything about it. The silence went on for 4 full seconds. Miss Bennett, Vincent said quietly, that's the first thing anybody's asked me for since my father died that actually cost me something. Is that a yes? That's a yes. 12:15. She was 3 steps out of the elevator in the lobby with a signed contract in her bag and her whole body vibrating when a man stood up from a chair by the window. He was 70. He had a beautiful gray coat and the same nose as Vincent and a smile like a card table. Sophia Bennett, Richard Moretti said. The girl from the restaurant. Sit with me 2 minutes. I don't know you. Yes, you do. He sat back down and gestured at the chair across from him with absolute confidence that she would take it. You've known me your whole life. Every neighborhood's got one. Sit. She sat. She did not know why she sat. You said something Friday, Richard said. Beautiful. Word perfect. My driver couldn't stop talking about it, and Tony's got the vocabulary of a parking meter, so believe me, that's a review. He folded his hands. Corleone dialect. Your grandmother. You've been asking about me too. Sweetheart, I asked about you before he did. I was asking about you Friday at 9:40 p.m. He didn't get around to it till 11. Richard laughed. That's the difference between us, and you should write it down because it's the only useful thing anybody's going to tell you this month. What do you want? I want you to take the job, Richard said. Sophia blinked. Oh, don't do that face. Take it. Take the money. 240, take it. He'd have gone to 3, but you didn't ask which. Tells me you've never been paid properly in your life, and I find that genuinely sad. He leaned forward. Take the job, do the job, and in 9 weeks when the Milan people go home, you and I are going to have coffee. Why? Because you're going to want to, Richard said. Not because I'll make you, because in 9 weeks you're going to have questions, and there's exactly one man alive who can answer them, and I'm sitting in front of you. I don't have any questions. You have one, Richard said. "You've had it since Friday. You just haven't let yourself say it yet." Sophia's mouth was dry. "What is it?" Richard Moretti smiled at her with enormous grandfatherly warmth. "Why you?" he said. And he stood up and he buttoned his beautiful coat and he said, "Out of 8 million people in this city, why did the most careful man in New York walk into a restaurant he'd just bought, on the one night at the one table where the one girl who speaks his dead mother's dialect happened to be working a double—" He looked down at her. "Do the math, sweetheart. You're smart. That's not luck. That's never once in the history of this family been luck." Then he walked out into the sunlight on Park Avenue South and got into a car, and Sophia Bennett sat in a lobby chair for 11 minutes and could not make her legs work. 2:18 that afternoon. She went back up. She did not check in with the woman in the reading glasses. She walked straight past the desk and into the office, and Vincent was on the phone, and he took one look at her face and said, "I'll call you back," and hung up on somebody who was very probably not used to that. "He was downstairs," Sophia said. Vincent's whole body changed. It was like watching a door close. "What did he say?" "He told me to take the job." "What else?" "He told me to ask you why me." Vincent Moretti did not answer, and that Sophia understood was the answer. "Oh my God," she said. "Sophia, you knew I'd be there Friday." "Sit down." "Don't tell me to sit down. You knew. You knew I'd be there. You knew I speak that dialect you knew about Elena Ricci in 90 minutes because you already had a file, didn't you? You already had a file?" "Yes," Vincent said. The word landed like the plate hitting the wall. "Say it again," Sophia said. "But this time look at me." And he did. He looked right at her, and Vincent Moretti, who had not flinched in front of a federal prosecutor, a rival family, or his own uncle, looked like a man walking into cold water. "There's a file," he said. "It's in that box, third from the bottom, the one that says 2019 on the side, and if you open it, you're going to see your name and a photograph of you at 23 and 40 pages and a date." "What date?" "Sophia." "What date?" "March 11th, 2019, Vincent said. 3 years before I ever laid eyes on you." Sophia could not breathe. "Who made it?" "I did." "Why?" And Vincent Moretti, the most feared man in New York, put both hands flat on the table, like a man bracing for something. "Because your parents' car didn't skid," he said, 2:19 in the afternoon. Sophia Bennett heard the words and her body understood them before her mind did. Her hands went cold first, then the back of her neck. Then a sound came out of her that she did not recognize as her own, a short, flat sound with no shape to it, and she put one hand on the back of the chair because the floor had stopped being reliable. "Say it again," she said. "Sophia. You said my parents' car didn't skid. Say it again." Vincent Moretti did not move his hands off the table. "It didn't skid. There was rain. There was rain. There was rain, and there was a curve, and there was a truck in the left lane that pulled over, and the report says, my father overcorrected." She was talking fast now, the words piling up on each other. "I have read that report 400 times. I read it when I was 17, and I read it when I was 20, and I read it 2 years ago at 3 in the morning because I couldn't remember what my mother's voice sounded like, and reading it made me feel like I was doing something. 400 times. Page 11. He overcorrected." "Page 11 was written by a man named Delgado," Vincent said. "He retired 8 months later. He bought a house in Port Charlotte, Florida for cash." The room made a high, thin noise, and Sophia realized it was in her own ears. "You're lying. You want me to be. You're lying because if you're not lying, then you've been sitting in this office with that box for 6 years, and you gave a woman a lawyer to impress me, and you bought a building to impress me, and you sat there this morning and let me negotiate for a 19-year-old's tuition, like I was clever, and the whole time—" Her voice broke in half. "The whole time it was in the box." "Yes," Vincent said. "Don't just say yes." "What else is there?" "Fight with me," she screamed. And it came out of her so loud that the woman with the reading glasses stood up outside, and Sophia heard the chair, and she did not care, and Vincent did not look at the door once. "I'm not going to fight with you," he said quietly. "You're right about every part of it. If I fight you, I'm just making you do the work of being angry, and you shouldn't have to do the work. Third box from the bottom. It says 2019 on the side. It's not locked. It's never been locked." 2:26. She got down on the floor in a $240,000 job and dragged 3 boxes off a stack, and the tape on the 4th one came away in one long strip like it had been waiting. There was one folder in it. That was all. One folder in a box that could have held 40. The photograph was on top. She was 23 in it, coming down the courthouse steps on Adams Street with a bag on her shoulder and her mouth open mid-word, talking to somebody outside the frame. It was not a surveillance photo. It was too well lit for that. Somebody had stood 20 feet away in the middle of a Tuesday and taken a picture of her like she was a person, not a target. Under it, 41 pages. She read the first 4 standing up. The 5th one put her on the floor. "Local 313, she said. "Yeah. My father was the recording secretary of Local 313. He drove a truck for 19 years, and he was the recording secretary because nobody else wanted to take the minutes." She was reading, and her eyes were moving too fast, and she went back and read it again. "Vincent, what is this?" "Read it." "What is this?" "Sophia, if I tell you, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering if I said it right. Read it." So she read it. Michael Bennett, 49 years old recording secretary, had spent 11 months writing down numbers in a spiral notebook because the pension fund of a local with 1,400 members was $41,000 lighter every month than the arithmetic said it should be. He was not a hero. There was nothing in the 41 pages that made him a hero. He was a man who took the minutes because nobody else wanted to, and taking the minutes had taught him to add, and the adding would not stop. On the 19th of February, he took the notebook to a lawyer on Montague Street. On the 22nd of February, the lawyer called somebody. On the 3rd of March, a mechanic in a garage on 4th Avenue put a car on a lift for a routine inspection that Michael Bennett had not scheduled and had not paid for, and had, according to his own wife's calendar, been told was free because the shop was celebrating an anniversary. On the 11th of March, in the rain on the Belt Parkway, a 19-year-old Buick with $41,000 a month of somebody else's problem in the trunk did not slow down. "He didn't overcorrect," Sophia said. "No. He was standing on it." She looked up and she could not see. "He was standing on the brake pedal with both feet, with my mother next to him, and there was nothing there." Vincent Moretti closed his eyes for 1 second. It was the only thing he did. "Page 31, he said. "Don't read it today. Page 31 is the mechanic. Page 31 is the mechanic. His name was Rocco Tanzi, and he was 62 years old, and he wrote that on a legal pad in a hospice in Bay Ridge in February of 2019, and he signed it, and 2 nurses signed it, and he died 9 days later." Vincent opened his eyes. "He asked for a priest, and he got me instead. That's the whole reason I know. Not because I'm clever, because a dying man got the wrong visitor and decided it was close enough." 2:41. Sophia sat on the floor of that office with 41 pages in her lap and cried the way she had not cried in 9 years. Not at the funeral, not in the hospital hallway, not once. And Vincent Moretti did not come around the table and did not touch her and did not say a single word for 4 minutes. That was the thing she remembered. Every man she had ever known would have crossed the room, would have put a hand on her shoulder and made it a moment about how decent they were. Vincent Moretti sat in a chair 11 feet away and let her have it, all of it alone, because he understood something that took most people a lifetime, which was that grief with an audience is a performance, and grief with a witness is a mercy, and he was choosing to be the second one. When she finally lifted her head, her voice came out wrecked. 6 years. 6 years. You've known for 6 years. Yes. And you didn't tell me. No. Why? Because I couldn't prove it, Vincent said. That's the answer, and you're going to hate it. Rocco Tanzi is dead. Delgado's dead 3 years ago in Florida. The Buick went to a scrapyard in Newark in April of 2016, and it was cubed by June. The notebook is gone. The lawyer on Montague Street had a stroke in 2020 and doesn't know his own name. He leaned forward. I've got 41 pages that a district attorney would call a story. If I bring you that when you're 20, what happens? You take it to the police. And then you're a 20-year-old girl with no parents and no money telling the city of New York that a dying mechanic said something to a Mafia boss. So you decided for me. Yes. You had no right. I know, Vincent said. You had no right. I know. he said again, louder, and it was the first time she had ever heard him raise his voice, and it was worse than the plate. You think I don't know? You think I haven't sat in this room? I've had a photograph of a girl in a box for 6 years, and every year I told myself the same thing. Next year, when it's cleaner, when I've got him, when I can hand her a name and a body to go with it instead of handing her a hole in the ground and telling her to look at it forever. He stood up. And then Friday night you looked at me across a room and told me I was given everything and grew nothing. And Sophia, I want you to understand something. I have been called worse by better. It didn't hurt because it was cruel. It hurt because you had no idea how right you were. 252. She stood up. The pages went everywhere and she did not pick them up. Who? She said. Sophia. Say the name. Sit down, because when I say it, you're going to want to do something, and the thing you're going to want to do gets you killed by Thursday. Say the name. I'm asking you to sit down. Say the name. And Vincent Moretti looked at her across 11 feet of gray carpet and said, My uncle. The silence had a texture to it. Richard, she said. Richard. Richard Moretti. Richard Moretti, Vincent said, who was sitting in the lobby of this building 40 minutes ago, telling you to have coffee with him in 9 weeks. Sophia's legs went. She sat down in the chair after all, and she hated it, and she laughed, and the laugh came out horrible and wet. He touched my hand, she said. What? He held the door of the elevator with his hand, and he called me sweetheart, and he said, Do the math, sweetheart, you're smart. She looked up. He was measuring me, that whole conversation. He wasn't recruiting me, he was checking to see if I knew. Yes. And now he knows I know. He knows you're going to know, Vincent said. There's about a 2-hour difference and we're 20 minutes into it, 3:11. He did not let her leave the building alone. That was the first fight. She won it, and then lost it, and then won it again. And the compromise was that a man named Paulie drove her to Belandi's in a car that was not black and did not look like anything. And Paulie was about 60 and talked the entire way about his daughter's wedding. And Sophia understood in some distant part of her brain that this was on purpose, that Vincent Moretti had sent her a man who would talk about a wedding for 22 minutes so that she would not have to sit alone in her own head. Danny took one look at her when she walked in and said, What? Nothing. Sophia. Danny, I need you to give me a table and a drink and not talk to me. You got it? He gave her table 2. Of course he did. She sat in Mrs. Abruzzo's chair with her back to a wall, and Danny put a glass of red wine down in front of her that she had not ordered and would not pay for. And then he did the thing that made her love him, which was that he walked away. Rosa came out 4 minutes later and sat down across from her without asking. Who died? Rosa said. My parents. Rosa's face did something complicated. Sophia, your parents died 9 years ago. Yeah, Sophia said. Turns out that's not the whole sentence. 3:40. Marco came out of the kitchen at some point with a plate of bread he had not been asked for, and he set it down, and he stood there, and she looked up at him. I got a letter, Marco said. What? This morning, from a school, from Hunter. His whole face was doing something he had no control over. It says my tuition's covered. It says there's a fund. There's a fund for kids in food service. They said I qualify. They said... He stopped. He was 19. He looked about 12. Sophia, my mother, cried in the kitchen. She cried for like an hour. She kept asking me who did it, and I said, nobody, it's a fund. And she said, nobody does nothing for nobody, and I said, Ma, it's a fund. Sophia looked at this boy and thought 4 hours ago I traded that letter across a table for my own silence. It's a fund, she said. Yeah, Marco, it's a fund. It's a real thing. Go call your mother. He went. Rosa watched him go and then turned back and looked at Sophia for a long, long moment. Sophia. Don't. What did you do? I took a job, Sophia said. 4:55. Her phone rang. It was a number she did not know, and she knew exactly who it was before she answered, which was the part that frightened her most. Sweetheart, Richard Moretti said warmly. You've had a day. Sophia's whole arm went numb. How did you get this number? Sophia, come on, ask me a real question. A chair creaked somewhere on his end. You want to know why I'm calling? I'll tell you. I'm calling because my nephew has had 6 years in a box, and today he finally opened it, and I want 30 minutes before you decide the world is a simple place. You killed my father." She said it out loud in a restaurant at table 2 at 4:55 on a Monday. Richard Moretti did not laugh, and he did not get angry, and he did not deny it. He said, "Is that what he told you? He showed me 41 pages. Did he now? He showed me a mechanic's affidavit." "Rocco," Richard said, and there was something in his voice that could have been fondness. "Rocco Tanzi, 62 years old, dying on so much morphine he was talking to his mother in the corner of the room. And 9 days before God takes him, a man walks in and asks him a question about 2016. And Rocco says whatever that man wants to hear, because that man is holding his hand, and that man's name is Moretti, and Rocco Tanzi worked for this family for 30 years. A pause. "Sweetheart, I'm not going to tell you he's lying. I'm going to tell you something much worse. I'm going to tell you he's not." "What?" "Vincent believes every word of that file," Richard said. "That's the tragedy. He's believed it for 6 years and it's eaten him alive, and I have watched it and I have let him, because the alternative was telling him the truth, and I love that boy." Sophia's hand was shaking so hard she had to put the phone on the table and pick it up again. "Say what you're saying." "No," Richard said. "Not on a phone. Not to a girl who's been crying. Tomorrow, 9 in the morning. There's a bakery on 18th Avenue called Prisco's. It's been there since 1961. It's got 16 tables and my picture on the wall from when I was 30, and beautiful. Come alone or don't come alone. I truly don't care. Bring the whole New York Police Department." He paused. "But come, Sophia, because there's one page in that file with a signature on it, and I want to be standing there when you read the name." He hung up. 9:04 the next morning. The bakery smelled like almonds and burnt sugar, and it was full of old men who had been having the same argument since the Ford administration. And Richard Moretti sat at a table in the back with an espresso and a folder, and when Sophia walked in, every single conversation in that room continued exactly as it was, which somehow terrified her more than silence would have. "Sit," he said. "Have the sfogliatella. It's not a metaphor, it's just very good." "I'm not eating. Suit yourself?" She sat down across from a man who had ordered her father's death, and she put her hands in her lap so he could not see them. "You look like your mother," Richard said. Everything in Sophia went white. "Don't." Teresa Finelli, Corleone by way of Bensonhurst, by way of a walk up on 72nd Street with a woman in the doorway who could take the paint off a wall with her mouth. He sipped the espresso. "Your grandmother, Concetta. She called me a name in 1974 that I have never repeated to another living soul, and sweetheart, when Tony called me Friday night at 9:40 and told me what you said and how you said it, I sat down on my bed like an old man, because I have heard that word in that mouth, in that exact dialect one time before in my life, and I was 22 years old." Sophia could not speak. "So no," Richard said, "I'm not going to sit here and pretend I don't know who you are. I knew who you were before Vincent did. I knew who you were 9 years ago." "Then you knew when you did it." Richard set the cup down. "Open the folder," he said. It was one page. A work order. A garage on 4th Avenue dated the 3rd of March, and a scope of work that said nothing at all, and a line at the bottom for authorization, and on that line in blue ink, in a hand she had seen 4 hours ago on a $240,000 contract, was the name, V. Moretti. Sophia stopped breathing. "He was 28, Richard said quietly. His father was still alive, and he was the errand boy, and that's what an errand boy does. He signs. He signs 40 of those a week, and he doesn't read one of them, because reading them is how you find out. And the entire architecture of this family for 80 years has been built on nobody reading anything." He turned the page around with 2 fingers. "That's not a forgery. Take it to a lab. Take it to the FBI. I'll drive you." "You're saying he did it?" "I'm saying he signed it," Richard said, "which is not the same thing and is also exactly the same thing, and every man in this room could explain the difference to you, and not one of us could look you in the eye while we did it." "Why are you showing me this?" "Because he's going to tell you it was me," Richard said, "and I could sit here and swear it wasn't, and you'd never believe me. And honestly, sweetheart, you shouldn't. I'm not a good man. I've never once claimed to be. That's the only difference between me and my nephew, and it is the whole difference." He leaned back. "Vincent needs to be a good man. He needs it like air. And a man who needs to be good will build himself a story where somebody else did the terrible thing, and he'll believe it so hard that after 6 years, it's not a lie anymore, it's just his furniture. You're telling me he doesn't know. I'm telling you, Richard said, that on March 11th of 2016, my nephew was 28 years old and he did what he was told. And 3 weeks later, his father died, and he inherited a name and a chair and a hole in his own memory, and he has spent 9 years buying buildings for old women to fill it. He put his hand flat on the table, not touching hers, 6 inches away. And now he's found the girl, the actual girl. And he can't tell her, because if he tells her, then there's nothing left of him at all. So he tells her it was the uncle, and the uncle lets him, because that's what family is, and you'll never understand it, and I hope to God you never have to. Sophia stood up so fast the chair went over. Every old man in Prisco's looked up. Nobody moved. Sweetheart, Richard said, sit down and finish. There's more. There's always more. Then say it. Richard Moretti looked up at her, and for 1/2 of 1 second, the warmth went out of his face like somebody had switched off a lamp, and Sophia saw what was underneath it, and it was the flattest thing she had ever seen in a human face. The Milan people land in 9 weeks, he said, $400 million, and there's exactly one person in that room who's going to hear both sides of every conversation. He smiled, and the lamp came back on. Take the job, Sophia. Do the job, and in 9 weeks, when you know which one of us has been lying to you, you'll know exactly who to hand it to. 10:41 in the morning. She did not remember the train. She did not remember the elevator. She remembered the woman with the reading glasses saying, Miss Bennett, he's in a call with Milan. And she remembered saying, I know, and walking past her anyway, and the woman not stopping her. And later Sophia would think about the fact that a 26-year woman in Vincent Moretti's building had walked into his office twice in 2 days without permission, and nobody had laid a hand on her, and what that meant, and who had given that order. Vincent was standing at the window with a phone against his ear. He turned around. He said something in Italian into the phone and hung it up mid-sentence on $400 million. Sophia put the page on the table. She did not say anything. She just put it down and stepped back and folded her arms so he could not see her hands, and she watched his face, because his face was the only evidence she was ever going to get, and she was going to take all of it. Vincent Moretti looked at the page. He did not pick it up. He did not lean in. He stood there, and Sophia watched 9 years of a man come apart in about 4 seconds, and it was so quiet in that office that she could hear the traffic 14 floors down. Where did you get this? He said. You know where? Sophia. Prisco's, 9 o'clock. He bought me a coffee I didn't drink. Her voice was steady, and she had no idea how. He told me you were 28. He told me you signed 40 a week and you never read one. He told me you built yourself a story so you could live inside it, and that he's let you have it for 6 years because he loves you. Vincent said nothing. Look at me, Sophia said. He looked at her. Is that your signature? 3 seconds. 4. Yes, Vincent Moretti said. That's my signature. I said I couldn't prove who ordered it, Vincent said. I never once said I couldn't prove who signed it. I've known who signed it since the day I opened that box, because I'm the one who put the copy in it. Sophia stood there with her arms folded and her nails in her own skin. You investigated yourself? Yes. For 6 years? Yes. And what did you find? That I did it, Vincent said. That's what I found. That's what I've had for 6 years. Everything after page 39 is me trying to find out whether I meant to. 10:49. Sophia sat down. Not gracefully. Her body simply stopped agreeing to hold itself up, and she landed in the chair with her hands in her lap and her heart going so fast it felt like a bird in a box. Tell me, she said. Sophia. Don't manage me. Don't sit there and decide what I can hold. Everybody in my life has spent 9 years deciding what I can hold, and it turns out all of you were wrong. Tell me. Vincent Moretti pulled out the chair across from her and sat down in it, which he had not done, not once, not in either meeting. He had stood at the window. He had stood behind the table. He sat down now like a man taking off a coat he had worn for a decade. March of 2016, he said. I'm 28. My father is alive and he's sick and nobody's saying the word out loud yet. And my job, worn for a decade. March of 2016, he said. I'm 28. My father is alive and he's sick and nobody's saying the word out loud yet. And my job, my actual job in this family is that I sign things. What things? Everything, Vincent said. Purchase orders, vendor agreements, maintenance authorizations, $40-50 a week. There's a girl who brings them in a folder and puts them on my left, and I sign them and she takes them off my right. And that's the whole job. That's what the son does. You want to understand this family, Sophia. Nobody in it ever gives an order. There's no man in a chair going, kill that guy. There's paper. There's always paper, and the paper is boring and the boring is the point. You didn't read them. I didn't read them. 40 a week for how long? 6 years, Vincent said. Roughly 12,000 pieces of paper. And I have thought every single day since 2019 about what else is in those 12,000. Sophia felt sick. That's not an excuse, she said. It's not an excuse. It's an architecture, Vincent said. Somebody built it. Somebody sat down 80 years ago and figured out that if you want a family to do terrible things forever, the trick isn't finding terrible men. Terrible men die. Terrible men get arrested. The trick is finding one decent man every generation and making him sign 40 pieces of paper a week until he's 50 and it's too late to ask. He looked at her. I'm the decent man. That's my job. That's what I was raised for. I'm the reason it's legal. 10:56. Who brought you the folder? Sophia said, and Vincent Moretti went completely still. That, he said, is the only question I've asked for 6 years. Answer it. There were 3 people in that office who could put paper on my desk in 2016, Vincent said. One was a man named Sal Fiore who did the vendor accounts. He died in 2017. Cancer, I checked. I checked it twice. I got the medical records. I'm ashamed of that and I'd do it again. That's one. The second was my father's bookkeeper, 91 years old now. He's in a home in New Jersey and he thinks I'm my father, and every time I visit he cries and tells me the Dodgers are going to be fine. Sophia waited. And the third, Vincent said. He didn't finish. Vincent. The third one is sitting 40 feet from us with a pair of reading glasses on her head, and she has brought me a coffee at 9:15 every morning for 6 years, and she has never once gotten it wrong. Sophia turned her head and looked at the door. Angela, she said. Angela. 26 years. His father hired me, Vincent said, and his voice did something on the word father that Sophia had never heard from him. She said that to you, didn't she, Monday? She says it to everybody. It's the first thing out of her mouth, and it took me 4 years to understand that it isn't small talk. It's a resume. It's her saying, I was here before you, and I'll be here after. You think she did it? I think somebody handed me a work order for a garage on 4th Avenue 8 days before a truck driver's brake lines gave out on the Belt Parkway, Vincent said. And I think there are 2 people alive who touched that paper, and one of them signed it and can't remember, and the other one types 90 words a minute and remembers everything. So ask her. I can't. Why? Because if she's his, Vincent said, then the second I ask, Richard knows I'm asking, and I lose 6 years in one afternoon. And because if she's not his, I've just accused a 64-year-old woman who held my mother's hand at the funeral of helping kill a truck driver, and I don't get that back either. He shook his head. I've had 6 years, and I've never asked her, not once, because there was no version of asking that I survived. 11:01. Sophia Bennett stood up. Sophia. She walked to the door. Sophia. She opened it. Sophia, don't. And she walked out into that gray carpet and across that boring reception area and stood in front of a desk where a woman in reading glasses was typing, and Vincent Moretti came through the door behind her 3 seconds later and stopped, because there was nothing on earth he could do. Angela, Sophia said. Miss Bennett. The typing didn't stop. He's not free until noon, but I imagine that stopped mattering. March 3rd, 2016, a work order for a garage on 4th Avenue, authorization from V. Moretti, who put it on his desk. The typing stopped. Angela took the reading glasses off her head and set them on the desk very carefully, the way you'd set down something you'd been carrying a long time, and she looked at Sophia Bennett and she said, I did. Vincent made a sound. Sit down, Vincent, Angela said without looking at him. You've been standing in that doorway for 6 years. 11:03. Nobody moved. You want to know what took you so long, Angela said. 6 years. 6 years, and it takes a girl from a restaurant 3 days. She folded her hands. I typed it. I typed it on the 2nd of March at 4 in the afternoon, and I put it in the folder, and I put the folder on his desk on the 3rd, and he signed it at 9:40 in the morning without looking the same way he signed the other 39, and then he asked me if I wanted a coffee because he always asked because his mother raised him. Her chin came up. I said no. I've said no every morning for 26 years. He still asks. Who told you to type it? Sophia said. There was a call. From who? Angela looked at Vincent for the first time. Say it, Vincent said. His voice had gone somewhere Sophia had never heard. Your uncle. 11:04. Vincent Moretti put one hand on the reception desk. That was all he did. He put one hand flat on the laminate and stood there, and Sophia watched a man who had bought 6 buildings and moved $400 million across an ocean hold onto a desk like a railing. 6 years, he said. 6 years. You've handed me a coffee every morning for 6 years. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? And Angela, 64 years old, hired by his father, stood up. Because you never asked me, she screamed. It went through that office like a plate hitting a wall. 26 years? Angela's whole body was shaking. 26 years I've sat at this desk and I have watched every man in this family walk past me like I'm a lamp. Your father, your uncle, their lawyers, their accountants, 40 men in 40 coats, and not one of them, not one, has ever once said, Angela, what did you see? They talk in front of me. Do you understand? They talk in front of me because I'm furniture. I know where every dollar in this company has been since 1999, and nobody has ever asked me a single question about any of it. Angela, and you. She was crying now, and she was furious about it. You were the only one I thought would ask. Your mother sat right there in that chair when you were 9 years old, and she told me, Angela, that one's different, that one's got a soul in him, watch him for me. And I did. For 26 years I watched you, and every year I waited for you to walk out here and ask me one question, and every year you walked past. I couldn't, Vincent said. If you were his. If I were his, I'd have retired to Florida in 2004 like everybody else who was his. Angela slammed her hand down on the desk. I'm not his. I'm not anybody's. I'm the girl your father hired out of Bishop Kearney in 1999 because I could type and because my brother worked on his crew, and I have spent my entire adult life at this desk keeping my mouth shut because that is what women at this desk do. The office was very quiet. Angela, Sophia said gently, why did you keep the coffee thing going? Angela turned and looked at her, and something in the woman's face broke open. Because he asks, she said, 11:11. Vincent Moretti got down. Not all the way, not on his knees, but he crouched beside that desk the way he had crouched beside Mrs. Abruzzo's table so that his eyes were lower than hers, and he said, Angela, what did you see? And Angela Ruffo, 64 years old, put her hand over her mouth and cried for about 8 seconds. Then she wiped her face with the back of her wrist, sat down, opened the bottom drawer of her desk, and took out a book. It was a ledger. Cardboard covers, the kind you buy for $4. Your father taught me this in 2001, she said. He said, Angie, in this business, the paper goes away. So you keep your own. Not for them, for you. She set it on the desk. Every call that comes into this office I write down, time, name, what they wanted. 26 years. There are 19 of these in my apartment in a closet behind the vacuum. Sophia could not breathe. March 2nd, 2016, Angela said, and she did not have to look. 4:06 in the afternoon, Richard Moretti. Instruction to type a maintenance authorization for Tansy's garage on 4th Avenue vehicle to be specified by the shop bill to the building account and to put it in the Wednesday folder. She looked up. That last part's the part. That's the part nobody understands. He didn't say give it to Vincent. He said put it in the Wednesday folder. He never once in his life said a name. Because the folder goes to whoever's signing, Sophia said slowly. The folder goes to whoever's signing, Angela said. And in March of 2016, the man who was signing was 28 years old, and his father was dying, and he'd been up all night at Sloan Kettering, and Richard Moretti knew that because Richard Moretti had been at the same hospital. Vincent Moretti stood up. 11:15. "He put it in my hand on purpose," he said. "Yes. He wanted my name on it." "Vincent," Angela said almost kindly, "he's wanted your name on something since the day you were born. That's not a plan. That's a hobby. He's been collecting you your whole life." "Why?" Sophia said. "Why does he need Vincent's name on it?" And Angela Ruffo looked at her with 26 years behind her eyes. "Because a man who's holding your leash," she said, "never has to hurt you. And because in this family the one who signs is the one who hangs, and Richard Moretti has never signed anything in his life. Not a lease, not a check, not a birthday card. Go look. Go look at 80 years of paper in this company and find me his handwriting." Sophia's whole body went cold. "That's why he showed me the page," she whispered. "What?" Vincent said. "That's why he showed it to me this morning. He didn't show it to me to hurt you. He's had it for 9 years. He could have burned it in 2016. She was talking fast, her mind going faster. "He showed it to me because he wants me holding it. He wants a witness. He wants a 26-year-old girl with a dead father walking around New York with your signature in her purse because the minute I take that to anybody, you're gone. You're gone, and he inherits everything, and his hands are clean because his name isn't on anything, anywhere, ever." "He handed you the gun," Angela said. "He handed me the gun," Sophia said. "And Milan lands in 9 weeks, Vincent said. The three of them stood there. "Oh my God," Sophia said. "That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing, Vincent. That's it. He doesn't want to stop the deal. He wants the deal to close. And then he wants you indicted. $400 million lands, the trust gets funded, and then the nephew who signed a work order in 2016 goes away for it, and the money's already in the building." "He'd have to have a prosecutor," Vincent said. "He's had 30 years to buy a prosecutor. He'd have to have a witness." "He does," Sophia said, and her voice broke. "He's had one since Friday at 9:40 p.m. It's me." 11:22. Vincent Moretti walked to the window and stood there with his hands in his pockets, and for 2 full minutes nobody said anything. Then he said, "Angela." "Yes. You've had 19 ledgers in a closet behind a vacuum for 26 years. "I have." "Why?" Angela Ruffo picked up her reading glasses and put them back on her head. "In case somebody ever asked," she said. 11:36. Sophia's phone buzzed on the reception desk. She looked at it. Vincent watched her face and said, "What?" "It's Danny." She answered it, and Danny Belandi's voice came out of that phone like something torn. "Sophia." "Danny?" "There's a man here." Sophia's stomach dropped through the floor. "What man?" "He's sitting at table 2. Danny's voice was very quiet and very fast. "He came in at 11:20. He didn't order anything. He's just sitting at table 2, and he's got a coffee he brought in with him from somewhere else. And Sophia, that's the thing that's wrong. He brought his own coffee into a restaurant. Who does that? Why would a man do that? Danny, listen to me. The Abruzzos come at noon on Tuesdays now. They changed it. They come at noon because of the free thing. They come twice a week now. Sophia, they're so happy about it. They told everybody in the neighborhood the kitchen loves them." "Danny." "He asked me what time they come in," Danny said. Vincent Moretti took the phone out of her hand. "Danny, it's Vincent Moretti. Describe him." Sophia could hear Danny's voice going tinny and fast. "Gray hair, 60. Nose is broken twice. He's got a ring on his little finger." Vincent's eyes closed. "Vincent, he asked me what time the old people come in, and I told him because I'm a coward. I told him 12 o'clock, and then I went in the back and I threw up in a sink." "Danny, he knows you own the building." Danny listened to me very carefully. "His name is Frankie Vaso, and he's not there for the Abruzzos, and he's not there for you. Is Marco working?" "Marco's on till 4. Send Marco home, right now. Don't explain it. Don't make it a thing. Tell him there's a delivery in Sunset Park. Then you call the Abruzzos, and you tell them the kitchen's closed for a plumbing problem, and you send them a car to take them to their daughters, and Danny, you make it sound boring. You make it sound like the most boring thing that's ever happened to you in your life. Vincent, what is he there for? He's there so I'd get this phone call, Vincent said. That's all. That's the entire job. He'll be gone in 9 minutes. He hung up. 11:41. He's not going to hurt them, Vincent said. You don't know that. Sophia, I've known Frankie Vasso since I was 6 years old. He drove me to my first communion. He is not going to touch an 80-year-old woman. Then why is he sitting in that chair? Because it works, Vincent said. Look at us. Look at what he just did to this room in 20 minutes with a man and a cup of coffee. He turned around. That's what my uncle does. He doesn't hurt anybody. He never has to. He puts a man in a chair and lets you do the rest yourself. Sophia was shaking. Vincent, he knew. He knew we'd be here. He knew we'd be standing at this desk right now. Yes. How? Because I hung up on Milan, Vincent said. 11:43, and Sophia Bennett understood something that made the room tilt. Who was on the Milan call? She said. Vincent didn't answer. Vincent, who was on the Milan call this morning? 4 people, he said slowly. 2 lawyers in New York, a banker in Milan. He stopped. And my uncle's on the board of the trust, Vincent said. He's been on it since 2011. He has to be. He's got a 19% position. I can't remove him. I've had 3 law firms look at it. He was on the call. He was on the call. He was on the call when you hung up on $400 million in the middle of a sentence, Sophia said, and 11 minutes later, a man sat down in your restaurant. Vincent Moretti looked at her. He didn't know what I found out, he said. He just knew I found out something. That's all he needed. He fired a gun in the air to see which way I'd run. And which way did you run? To the girl, Vincent said. Same as always. He knows me better than I know me. That's the part that's been killing me for 6 years, Sophia. Not that he's evil. That he's right. 11:52. Angela's phone rang. She picked it up, listened for 4 seconds, and put her hand over the receiver. It's him, she said. Nobody in that room breathed. He's asking for Miss Bennett, Angela said. Sophia put out her hand. Sophia, Vincent said. He called this desk on purpose. He wants you to watch me take it. She took the phone. Then he's going to watch me take it. Sweetheart, Richard Moretti said, get your man out of that restaurant. He's already gone. He left at 11:41. He tipped, which is more than most of my family's ever done for that place. A chair creaked. Did you show him the page? Yes. And what did my nephew say? Sophia looked at Vincent Moretti across 11 feet of gray carpet. He said it was his signature, she said. And Richard Moretti sighed. It was the saddest sound she had ever heard a man make on a telephone, and it was completely, perfectly, professionally fake. And Sophia understood that in the exact instant she heard it, and it was the first moment in 3 days that she was not afraid. Ah, he said. Then you know. I know, Sophia said. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I truly am. I told you I'm not a good man, but I never lied to you. Richard. Yes. 4:06, Sophia said. March 2nd, 2016. The line went absolutely silent. 11:54. Sophia Bennett had never heard a silence like that in her life. It went on for 3 seconds, 4, and there was no breathing in it at all. And then Richard Moretti said in a voice that had nothing in it whatsoever, What did you say? You called this office at 4:06 in the afternoon on March 2nd, 2016, Sophia said. You told a girl at a desk to type a maintenance authorization for a garage on 4th Avenue and put it in the Wednesday folder. You didn't say his name. You never say a name. You've never said a name in your life. Nothing. Say it again, Sophia said. But this time look at me. You're not in front of me, sweetheart. No, Sophia said. I'm not. And that's the first time in 80 years anybody in this family has said something true to you and you couldn't do a thing about it. She hung up on him. She hung up on Richard Moretti and put the phone down on Angela's desk, and then her legs went, and Vincent caught her under the arm and put her in the chair, and Angela Ruffo said very quietly, Oh, honey. I just did something bad, Sophia said. Yeah, Vincent said. I just told him Angela's alive. 12:01. Nobody spoke for a long moment. "He already knew," Angela said. "Angela." "He already knew Vincent. He's known for 26 years that I write things down. Who do you think told me to—" She took the glasses off again. "Your father. And who do you think was standing in the doorway when he said it?" Sophia's blood stopped. "He's known this whole time," she said. "Of course he has," Angela said. "That's why I'm alive. That's the only reason I'm alive. A ledger in a closet behind a vacuum is worth more to that man than a dead secretary, because as long as it's in my closet, it's his. It's not evidence. It's a leash. It's been on Vincent's neck for 6 years, and Vincent never even knew it was there." She smiled, and it was awful. "And this morning a girl from a restaurant walked out here and asked me a question, and now it's not his anymore." 12:04. "Angela," Vincent said, "you need to leave the city." "No." "Angela." I said no. She put her glasses back on her head. "I've been at this desk for 26 years, and I have never once been late, and I am not going to be run out of it by a man who's never had a job in his life. Your mother told me to watch you." Her voice caught. "I'm still watching you." Vincent Moretti stood there and could not say anything at all. "Also," Angela said, "there's a copy." "What? You think your father taught me to keep a book and didn't teach me to copy it? There's a set in a safe deposit box at the Dime on 86th Street since 2009, and there's a lawyer in Manhattan who's had a letter from me in his file for 11 years that says who to give the key to if anything happens to me, and no, Vincent, I'm not going to tell you which lawyer because you're the one person in New York who's not allowed to know." "Why?" "Because if you know, they can make you know," Angela said. 26 years, honey. I've been listening the whole time. 12:19. Sophia's phone buzzed again. She looked at it and her whole face changed. "It's Marco," she said. "Answer it." "Marco." And a 19-year-old boy's voice came out of that phone, and he was not scared. He was crying so hard he could barely make words, and Sophia was on her feet before she knew she'd stood. "Sophia, Sophia." "Marco, what happened?" "There's a fire." The room went out from under her. "What?" "The restaurant." "Sophia, the restaurant's on fire. I'm on the corner. I can see it from the corner. The whole front is—" He gasped. "Danny sent me to Sunset Park. He sent me on a delivery. There's no delivery. Sophia, there was never any delivery. I got to the address, and it's a laundromat. And I called him, and he didn't pick up. So I came back, and there's 4 trucks. There's 4 trucks on Court Street. Marco, listen to me. Where's Danny?" "I don't know." "Where's Danny?" "I don't know. Nobody knows Rose is out on the sidewalk, and she's got no shoes on. She came out with no shoes, and they're saying he went back in." Sophia Bennett dropped the phone. 12:21. Vincent Moretti picked it up off the carpet. He listened for 6 seconds. He said, "Marco, this is Vincent. Stay on the corner. Do not move. Somebody's coming for you in 4 minutes, and his name is Paulie, and he's going to talk about his daughter's wedding, and you let him." He hung up. He made one call. It lasted 11 seconds, and Sophia did not hear a word of it because there was a sound in her head like the ocean. "Sophia, he burned it. Sophia, look at me. He burned a building with an 80-year-old woman's apartment in it. Mrs. Abruzzo is in a car on the Verrazzano with a driver named Gino, and she is complaining about the air conditioning," Vincent said. "Danny called them at 11:45. He did exactly what I told him. They were out of that building before the truck ever pulled up, and Sophia, that's not luck. That's Danny Belandi doing a boring thing quietly at 11:45 in the morning." "Where's Danny?" Vincent Moretti did not answer. "Vincent, where is Danny?" "I don't know," he said. 12:24. And that was when it happened. That was the exact moment, and Sophia knew it while it was happening, which almost never happens to anybody. Vincent Moretti stopped being tired. She had watched this man for 3 days, and she had cataloged every version of him. The bored one at table 9, the one who threw the plate, the one who crouched by an old man's chair, the one who sat down across from her 10 minutes ago and told her he'd been raised to sign things. And every single one of them underneath was the same man, and that man was exhausted. 9 years of exhausted. It was in his shoulders and his mouth and the 11 boxes he'd never unpacked. And then it just went away. Angela, Vincent said. Yes. Get me Marchetti, not the office, his cell. Then get me Bernstein at Katz Ferrara, and I don't care what he's doing, tell him I'm calling in 2014. His voice was completely level. Then call the dime on 86th Street and tell them you're coming in at 2 o'clock with a photo ID. Angela's hands stopped. Vincent? Then call your lawyer, the one I'm not allowed to know, and tell him the letter's active. Vincent, if I do that? If you do that, there's no leash, Vincent said. Not on me, not on you, not on a girl from a restaurant. Angela Ruffo looked up at him with 26 years in her face. Your mother was right, she said and picked up the phone. 12:29. You're going to lose everything, Sophia said. Yes. Vincent, $400 million. Yes. The trust, the buildings, Mrs. Abruzzo's lease, the 20-year lease, all of it, Marco's school, the whole... Sophia, you'll go to prison. Her voice came apart on the word. You signed it. Your name's on it. It doesn't matter that he handed it to you. That's not a defense. That's not how any of this works. You told me yourself the one who signs is the one who hangs. Sophia. Why? She screamed at him. Why now? You've had 6 years. You had a box and a ledger and a woman at a desk for 6 years. And you did nothing. And now today, over a restaurant. Because Danny Belandi went back in, Vincent said. And Sophia stopped. He made a phone call at 11:45 that I told him to make, Vincent said. And it was boring, and he did it, and because he did it, an old woman is on a bridge complaining about the air conditioning. And then a building I own started burning, and he went back inside it. Not for money, not for a name, because there's 22 years of his father in that room. Vincent Moretti's voice did not shake at all, and somehow that was the worst part. Nobody's ever done that for me. Do you understand what I'm telling you? 28 years in this family, and not one person has ever run toward the fire on my behalf without checking the price first. Danny Belandi's known me 4 days. Vincent, you asked me why I threw the plate, he said. I told you it's because I was tired. That was true, and it wasn't enough. You want the whole thing. I threw it because for 9 years I've been trying to build something out of a family that only knows how to take, and I was standing in a room I just bought for $9 million I'll never see again, watching everybody in it flinch when I moved, and I understood that I was going to die a monster no matter what I did. He looked at her. And then a waitress called me a coward in my mother's language. Sophia could not speak. You were the first person who ever told me the truth, Vincent said, and I've spent 3 days finding out that everyone else has been lying to me my entire life, including me. So no, I'm not going to sit in this office and sign anything ever again. 12:33. Angela hung up her phone. Marchetti's in a deposition. He's walking out of it. Good. Bernstein says, and I'm quoting, tell him 2014 is a hell of a thing to bring up over the phone, and he'll be here by 2. Good. And Vincent, Angela's voice had gone strange. There's a call holding on line 1. It came in while you were talking. I didn't want to interrupt. Who is it? It's the fire department, Angela said. They want the owner of the building. 12:34. Vincent Moretti picked up the phone. He listened. He said, this is he. He listened for 11 seconds. And Sophia Bennett watched his face because his face was the only evidence she was ever going to get, and she took all of it. Say that again, Vincent said, and then he sat down. 12:35. Vincent Moretti sat in Angela Ruffo's chair with a telephone against his ear and said, say that again. Sophia could not hear the voice on the other end. She could only watch his face, and his face was doing something she had no name for, and she stood there with both hands pressed flat against her stomach, like a woman holding herself together with her palms. When? Vincent said. Silence. No, I heard you. I'm asking you to tell me when. Silence. And who called it in? Angela had stopped moving entirely. Yeah, Vincent said. Yeah, I'm the owner. 12 buildings now, so you'll have to be specific, but yes. 214 Court Street, Belandi's. He listened for another 11 seconds. His name is Daniel Belandi, B-E-double-L. He's 46. He has a sister in Ozone Park, and I'll get you the number. Sophia's knees went. "He's alive," Vincent said, and he looked up at her and said it again louder because her face had gone completely white. "Sophia, he's alive. Methodist. He walked out on his own 2 feet, and then he sat down on the sidewalk, and they put him in a bus." She sat down on the floor. She sat down on the gray carpet of a reception area on the 14th floor of a building on Park Avenue South, with her back against the front of a desk, and Angela Ruffo got down there with her 64 years old in a skirt on the floor and put an arm around her, and Sophia Bennett cried into a stranger's shoulder for about 40 seconds. Then she stopped because she heard the rest of the call. "Say that number again," Vincent said. 1238. He hung up. He set the phone in the cradle very gently, like it was full of something. "What?" Sophia said. "Get up." "Vincent, what?" "Get up, both of you, get up." He was already moving. "Angela, cancel Bernstein." "You just told me to—" "Cancel him, move him to 5, and call the dime and tell them you're coming at 1:30 instead of 2, and Angela, take Polly, do not take a cab. I don't care how much you love the train. Do you hear me?" "Vincent, what did they say?" Vincent Moretti stopped and turned around, and there was something in his eyes now that had not been in them at any point in 3 days. "The fire started at 12:06, he said. "Okay." The call came in at 11:58. The whole floor went quiet. "Say that again," Sophia said. "Somebody called 911 8 minutes before that building started burning," Vincent said, from a payphone on Clinton Street. "There are 4 working payphones left in the borough of Brooklyn, and he used one of them because a payphone doesn't have a name on it. And he said, and I'm quoting the man who just read it to me off a screen, he said, 'There's going to be a fire at 214 Court Street.' And the dispatcher said, 'Sir, is there a fire?' And the man said, 'Not yet.'" Angela Ruffo put her hand over her mouth. "That's why there were 4 trucks on the corner in 4 minutes, Sophia whispered. "Marco said 4 trucks. Marco said the whole front was going, and there were already 4 trucks." "They were sitting on Atlantic Avenue with the engines running," Vincent said. "They'd been sitting there for 6 minutes waiting to see if the crank call was a crank call." "Who?" Sophia said. And Vincent Moretti smiled, and it was not a nice smile at all. "Frankie Vasso drove me to my first communion," he said, 12:41. "He said it," Sophia said slowly. "He said it. And then he called it in. He said it, and then he called it in 8 minutes early and stood on a corner and made absolutely certain that 4 engines were parked around the block before he lit a match," Vincent said. "That's not a man burning a building, Sophia. That's a man burning a building and refusing to burn a person. And there is exactly one reason a 60-year-old soldier does that." "Because he was told to do both," Angela said. The 3 of them looked at each other. "He told Frankie to do it at noon," Sophia said. "Noon. He asked Danny what time the old people come in. He asked Danny at 11:20 in front of Danny on purpose, so Danny would tell me, so I'd tell you, so you'd call Danny so you'd move them out." "No," Vincent said. "Vincent. No. Listen to what you just said. If he wanted them out, he didn't need Frankie to ask. He wanted them in." Sophia's blood stopped. "He wanted them in," Vincent said, "and he wanted Frankie to light it anyway, and he wanted me to find out afterward that it happened because a girl from a restaurant said 4:06 into a telephone. That's the whole design. He wasn't burning a building. He was building me a Tuesday I could never put down. And Frankie Vasso, who has never disobeyed a Moretti in his life, made a phone call from a payphone." He shook his head slowly. "Angela, in 26 years has anybody ever told him no?" "Isana." "Never," Angela said. "Then Frankie Vasso is the first," Vincent said, "and a man who said no once has already decided something." 1:14 in the afternoon. Methodist Hospital 6th floor, and Rosa was in the hallway in a pair of green paper slippers somebody had given her because she had run out of a burning building without her shoes. She saw Sophia and made a noise. "He's okay," Rosa said, and then she grabbed both of Sophia's arms. "He's okay. He's okay. They're keeping him for the smoke. His hands, they said his hands, but he's okay. He's talking, he's yelling. He's been yelling at a nurse for 20 minutes about how they're not letting him use his phone." "Rosa, I was in the walk-in. I was in the walk-in getting lemons and I came out and the whole front was—" She stopped. "Sophia, he sent everybody out. He came in the back and he counted us. He counted us. He goes, 6? That's 6? That's everybody. And then he pushed me out the door and I turned around and he wasn't there. Why did he go back in? Rose's face crumpled. Go ask him, she said, because I can't say it out loud. 1:19. Danny Belandi was sitting up in a bed with an oxygen line under his nose and both hands wrapped in white to the wrist, and when Sophia came through the door, he tried to lift one of them and then remembered and put it down. Hey, he said. His voice was ruined. Danny. I know. Danny, what did you do? Sophia, don't. What did you do? And Danny Belandi looked at the ceiling for a while. There's a picture, he said. Over the register. My father in 2004 opening day. He's got a ribbon and a pair of scissors, and he looks like an idiot. He's got the wrong tie on. My mother told him the wrong tie, and he wore it anyway because he'd already decided. Sophia could not breathe. That's it, Danny said. That's the whole thing. That's what I went in for. Everybody's out. Everybody's on the sidewalk. And I'm standing in the street, and I look up, and I think my father's in there. He closed his eyes. It's just a picture. I know it's just a picture. I'm 46 years old, and I know it's a picture, Sophia. I'm not stupid. Did you get it? Yeah, Danny said. Yeah. And he started to cry, which, with the oxygen line in the hands, was a horrible thing to watch. And Sophia sat down on the edge of that bed and did not touch him because there was nowhere left to touch him. It's in a bag, he said. In the closet. It's in an evidence bag because they had to take it off me. They had to physically take it off me, and the frame's gone, but the picture's fine. The picture's fine, Sophia. Not even a mark on it. Can you believe that? Not one mark. Danny. 22 years, Danny said. And I'm going to be honest with you because I got nothing left. I got no building and no job, and my hands are cooked, and I'm going to be honest with you. This morning, before any of it, I was sitting at that bar with that 20-year lease in front of me, and I was happy. For the first time since my father died, I was happy. 11 o'clock this morning, I was the happiest man in Brooklyn. He laughed, and it turned into a cough. $9 million that guy spent. $9 million, so an old lady could stay in 4C, and I got about 90 minutes out of it. And a voice from the doorway said, You got the 90 minutes. Vincent Moretti was standing there. Danny went absolutely rigid in the bed. Mr. Moretti? Danny? Mr. Moretti, I have to tell you something, and I have to tell you right now before I lose my nerve because I've been laying here for an hour working up to it. Danny's chin was shaking. He asked me what time the old people come in, and I told him. I told him because he looked at me. That's all. He just looked at me, and I told a man I never met what time an 80-year-old woman eats lunch. I know. I gave her up, Danny said. In 4 seconds, 4 seconds I gave up Mrs. Abruzzo. Danny. So whatever you're going to do... Danny, Vincent said, look at me. Danny Belandi looked at him. You gave her up in 4 seconds, Vincent said, and then you called her at 11:45 and told her the kitchen was closed for a plumbing problem, and you made it boring, and she got in a car, and right now she is on Staten Island driving her daughter insane about the air conditioning. That's what you did today. You want to lay in that bed and hold the 4 seconds fine. You've earned it. But you're going to hold the other part too because it's yours, and I'm not going to let you throw it away so you can feel bad in peace. Nobody said anything. And you got everybody out, Vincent said. You counted them. 6. How do you know I counted them? Because Rosa's told 9 people in that hallway, Vincent said. You're a legend on the 6th floor. There's a nurse out there crying about you. Danny Belandi laughed. It was a terrible, wet, broken sound, and it was the best thing Sophia had heard in 3 days. Danny, Vincent said, I'm going to say one thing, and then I'm going to go, because there's about 4 hours of my life left, and I've got to spend them carefully. Okay. I'm not rebuilding it. Sophia's head came around. Vincent. I'm not rebuilding it, Vincent said, because by Friday, I'm not going to own it. I'm not going to own anything. And I'm telling you now to your face in this room, because if you hear it from a lawyer in 6 weeks, you'll think I ran. Mr. Moretti, what are you talking about? The deed's going in your name today, Vincent said. The lot, the insurance claim, all of it. It's in Angela's hand right now, and she's the only person left in New York who can make a piece of paper move in one afternoon, and it's going to be the last thing I ever ask her to type. Danny stared at him. I can't take that. You already have, Vincent said. You took it at 12:15 when you counted to 6. 1:52. In the hallway, Sophia caught his arm. You just gave away a building. I gave away a hole in the ground with a fire report attached to it. Don't make it a poem. Vincent. He stopped. 4 hours, she said. You said 4 hours. What happens in 4 hours? And Vincent Moretti said Bernstein. 2:40 in the afternoon. Marchetti got there first, walking out of a deposition mid-sentence in a suit that cost more than Sophia's rent, and he came off that elevator and took one look at the reception desk and said, Angela. Marchetti. Angela, tell me it's not what he said on the phone. It's worse, Angela said, and there's 19 of them. Bernstein arrived at 4:51. He was 70 years old. He had a raincoat over his arm even though it wasn't raining, and he walked into that office and did not sit down and did not shake anybody's hand. 2014, he said. 2014, Vincent said. You told me. You sat in my office and I told you no, and you said good, and then you said, Mr. Bernstein, one day, I'm going to call you and I'm going to ask you for a thing that ends your career, and I want you to say yes, and that's what I'm hiring you for. Bernstein put the raincoat over a chair. 11 years. I've had 11 years of your money, and I have never once been able to sleep the night before a phone call. Today's the day, Vincent said. Say it out loud. I want to proffer. Bernstein closed his eyes. To who? Southern District, not Brooklyn. Why not Brooklyn? Because my uncle's owned somebody in Brooklyn since 1994, and I don't know who, Vincent said, and I've had 6 years to find out, and I couldn't, and that's the most frightening sentence I've ever said in my life. Bernstein sat down. Vincent, he said, and it was the first time all day anybody had used his first name like they'd earned it. Do you understand what a proffer is? You go in that room and you tell them everything, and there's no deal in front of it. There's a letter. A letter's not immunity. It's a promise not to use your own words against you, and there are 9 exceptions in the fine print, and every one of them is a trap door. I know. You've got a signature on a work order 8 days before 2 people died. I know. Then say the sentence, Bernstein said. Say the actual sentence, because I've watched 40 men come to this moment, and 39 of them said a different sentence than the one they meant. Vincent Moretti looked across the table at Sophia Bennett. I signed the authorization that put Michael and Teresa Bennett's car on a lift, he said. I didn't read it. I didn't know. And I don't get to have that because I've had 6 years to say it out loud, and I spent them buying buildings instead. The room was very quiet. That's the sentence, Bernstein said. 5:09. There's one more thing, Vincent said. Of course there is. It has to be before Milan. Bernstein went gray. No. Bernstein. No, absolutely not. Vincent, the trust funds on the 14th of next month. 14 days. You walk into the Southern District before that money lands, and every single thing you've built for 9 years evaporates, Vincent said. Yes. Do you know what that money is? Bernstein was on his feet. That's 11 buildings. That's $400 million of legitimate European capital coming into a structure I personally spent 2 years building, so that when you die, and you will die, the thing your father made becomes a thing your grandchildren aren't ashamed of. And you want to hand the government a confession 14 days before it closes. Yes. Why? And Sophia Bennett said, because Richard's on the board. Bernstein turned around and looked at her like he'd just noticed a 5th person in the room. Who is this? He said. She's the interpreter, Angela said from the doorway. She's the what? 19%, Sophia said. He's got 19% of the trust, and he can't be removed, and 3 law firms have looked at it. So the money lands, and the trust funds, and then a work order from 2016 with Vincent's name on it walks into a U.S. attorney's office by somebody else's hand, and Vincent goes away, and the 19% inherits a fully capitalized $400 million structure that he never signed a single piece of paper for. Bernstein sat down slowly. He's not fighting the deal, Bernstein said. He built the deal, Sophia said. He's been on that board since 2011. You spent 2 years constructing a beautiful, clean legal machine, Mr. Bernstein, and you built it for a man whose name is on everything, and the whole time there's been a man in the room whose name is on nothing. Bernstein put both hands flat on the table. Oh my God, he said. Yeah, Vincent said. He's been waiting for it to close. He's been waiting 9 years, Vincent said. He didn't need to stop me. He needed me to finish. 5:22. Then don't confess, Bernstein said. Blow up the deal. Kill it. Call Milan and walk away. You keep your freedom. You keep... And he does it again in 5 years with somebody else's nephew, Vincent said. No, there's only one way this ends. He needs my name on paper. So I'm going to put my name on paper. I'm just going to be the one holding the pen. Bernstein stared at him. That's the first time in 11 years you've made sense to me, he said. 6:40. Angela came in with a banker's box and set it on the table so hard the table moved. 19 ledgers, cardboard covers, $4 apiece. Marchetti opened the first one and read for about 90 seconds, and then said in a completely different voice, Angela, how many entries? I don't know. Estimate. 26 years, Angela said. Say 40 a day. Marchetti did the arithmetic on his phone and then set the phone down. 260,000, he said. Approximately. That sounds right. Mrs. Ruffo, Marchetti said. In 26 years, how many times did Richard Moretti say a name into your telephone? Angela Ruffo did not have to look it up. Never, she said. Not once. Not one time in 26 years. And Marchetti started to laugh. Why is that funny? Sophia said. Because it's the case, Marchetti said. Miss Bennett, do you understand? He thinks the ledger's harmless because there's no name in it. He's been letting her keep it for 26 years because it exonerates him. It's a leash. He turned the book around. But a man who never says a name 40 calls a day for 26 years isn't a careful man. That's not caution. That's a pattern. And a pattern is a conspiracy. You don't prove RICO with a smoking gun. You prove it with 100,000 small, consistent acts, and this woman wrote down every single one of them in a $4 notebook in her own hand, contemporaneously with dates. Vincent Moretti stood up so fast his chair hit the wall. Say that again, he said. The ledger isn't a leash, Marchetti said. The ledger's the indictment. He's been sitting on his own indictment for 26 years because he can't imagine that a secretary is a person. Nobody moved, and Angela Ruffo, 64 years old, took the reading glasses off her head, folded them, and put them in her pocket. Well, she said, 9:04 the next morning. Frankie Vaso was sitting in the back of Prisco's bakery at Richard Moretti's table. He was alone. He had a coffee. Sophia stood in the doorway of a room full of old men, and every single conversation continued exactly as it was. And she walked back there and sat down across from a man with a broken nose and a ring on his little finger. And she said, "You called it in at 11:58. Frankie Vaso looked at his coffee. "Who are you?" he said. "You know who I am." "Yeah," he said. "You're the girl who said the thing." "Mr. Vaso." Frankie, you called the fire department 8 minutes before you lit it." "I don't know what you're talking about." "There's a payphone on Clinton Street." "There's 4 payphones left in Brooklyn," Frankie said, "and I hear a lot of people use them." Sophia sat there. "Danny Belandi went back in," she said. And Frankie Vaso's hand stopped moving. "What?" "Danny Belandi, the manager, 46 years old. He got everybody out and counted them, and then he went back inside for a photograph of his father." She kept her voice absolutely level, both his hands to the wrist. "He's at Methodist, and they're saying 18 months of surgeries, and he's never going to hold a pen the same way again." Frankie Vaso put his coffee down. "Nobody was supposed to be in there," he said. "Say that again. Nobody was supposed to be in there." It came out of him so loud that 4 old men looked up. It was 12 o'clock. It was a Tuesday at 12 o'clock, and I sat on that corner for 6 minutes, and I watched 6 people come out that door, and I counted them. I counted them 6, and then He stopped. 6, Sophia said. Frankie Vaso's face came apart. "He counted 6, Sophia said. "You counted 6. You both counted 6, and you were both right. And he went back in anyway because you can count a building, Frankie, but you can't count a man. Get away from me, Frankie. Get away from me. Do you understand what you're doing? Do you have any idea what you're..." His voice dropped to nothing. 61 years old. 61 years, and I have never once, not one time, not in my whole life, said no. Frankie Vaso looked up at her, and his eyes were wet, and he was furious about it. He told me 12 o'clock, he said. I know. He told me 12 o'clock, and I said, Richie, the old ones eat at 12, and he said, Frankie. Frankie's mouth worked. He said, Frankie. That's all. That's all he said. He said my name, and then he waited, and I stood there in his kitchen for 11 seconds, and then I said, okay. But you called it in. I drove that boy to his first communion, Frankie Vaso said. He was 7 years old. He threw up in my car on Ovington Avenue because he was so nervous, and I told him, kid, don't worry about it. This is a Cadillac. It's been through worse. He wiped his face with the flat of his hand. And then 35 years go by, and his uncle tells me to burn a room with old ladies in it so the kid'll have a bad Tuesday. Sophia said very quietly, Frankie, will you say his name? I can't. Marchetti's outside in a car. I can't. Frankie, you don't understand what you're asking me. He slammed his hand on the table, and every man in Prisco's went silent, and not one of them moved. You're asking me to be the first. 80 years, sweetheart. 80 years, and nobody's ever been the first. And Sophia Bennett leaned across that table. You already were, she said, at 11:58, on a payphone, alone, with nobody watching and nothing in it for you, and no way to ever tell anybody. That's the whole thing, Frankie. You already did it. All that's left is saying it where somebody can hear. Frankie Vaso sat in Richard Moretti's chair in Richard Moretti's bakery and looked at a 26-year-old girl for a very long time. Concetta Finelli, he said. Sophia stopped breathing. 72nd Street, Frankie said. 4'11". She hit me with a broom in 1979, and I deserved it. He stood up and he took his coat off the back of the chair. Is the car on the corner? It's on the corner. Then let's go before I'm smart again, Frankie Vaso said. 11, 14, 16 days later, the Southern District of New York and Vincent Moretti signed his name. Bernstein told her about it afterward because she was not allowed in the room, and he told it to her in a hallway with his raincoat over his arm and his voice shaking. He read it, Bernstein said. What? They put the proffer in front of him, 9 pages. And every man I've ever walked into that room has signed it in 4 seconds, because by the time you get there, you're so tired you'd sign your own throat. Bernstein shook his head. He read it. All 9 pages, line by line. It took him 22 minutes, and there were 4 federal prosecutors sitting there watching him do it, and nobody said a word. And when he got to the end, he looked up and he said, "There's a typo on page 6, and then he signed it. Sophia put her hand over her mouth. Miss Bennett, Bernstein said. In 11 years, that's the only time I've ever seen him read one. The trust died at 4 o'clock that afternoon. $400 million simply stopped existing the way money does silently in an email, and 11 buildings went back to being 11 buildings, and Vincent Moretti walked out of a federal building with nothing. Richard Moretti was arrested 9 weeks later. It was not dramatic. There was no chase and no door coming off its hinges. 2 agents knocked on the door of a house in Diker Heights at 6:15 in the morning, and he opened it himself in a cardigan and asked if they wanted coffee, and one of them said, "No thank you, sir," and Richard Moretti said, "Suit yourself," and put his hands out. 14 counts. Racketeering conspiracy. 2 predicate acts of murder in aid of racketeering, arson, witness tampering, and 9 others that Sophia never learned the names of. The government's case was a 61-year-old driver, a 64-year-old secretary, 19 cardboard ledgers, and a man who had signed something. 2:30 in the afternoon on a Thursday in a hallway on Adams Street. Sophia Bennett was walking out of the courthouse where she had sat with Elena Ricci in a plastic chair, and Richard Moretti was walking in out on $4 million secured by a house he'd owned since 1988. He stopped. "Sweetheart," he said. She looked at him. "You look like your mother," Richard said. "I know." "Do you know what you did?" "Yes," Sophia said. "You put an old man in a room for the rest of his life," Richard said. And he smiled, and the warmth was still there. It was still perfect. It had not slipped a millimeter in 9 weeks. And you put my nephew in one too. That's the part nobody's going to tell you at your award ceremonies. He's going in, sweetheart. His name's on it. You didn't save him. You just picked which one of us goes first. I know that too. Then what did you get? And Sophia Bennett stood in a courthouse hallway and said it. Not loudly. In her grandmother's dialect with her grandmother's vowels, the same 3 words, and she watched them land on a 70-year-old man in a beautiful gray coat, and she watched 51 years peel off his face. Richard Moretti stopped smiling. Say that again, Sophia said, but this time look at me. He looked at her. And Richard Moretti, who had never said a name in his life, could not say a single word, and he went into that courtroom and he never came out of one again. 18 months. That's what Vincent got. 1 count and agreed sentence, and Bernstein cried in the elevator afterward and blamed his allergies. He served 14 months at a facility in Otisville, and Sophia drove up every second Saturday for 14 months in a Honda she bought for $4,000. And Marco came with her twice, and Rosa came once and talked for 90 straight minutes about nothing. Danny came every single time. He couldn't drive. His hands were still coming back, so he sat in the passenger seat of a $4,000 Honda for 2 hours each way, 28 times. And on the last trip he said, Sophia, I want to tell you something, and I don't want you to make it a thing. Okay? I'd have voted to convict him, Danny said, if I was on that jury. I want you to know that, because everybody keeps making him into a saint, and he's not. He signed it. He didn't read it. Both of those are true, and the second one doesn't erase the first one. I know. But I'd have driven up here anyway, Danny said. That was the whole thing. Sophia thought about it for the rest of her life. That was the entire architecture of the world right there in a Honda on Route 17. 1 year later, the Finelli Bennett Foundation opened on a Saturday in April on the ground floor of a building on Court Street that used to be a restaurant, and Sophia Bennett had put both names on the door and had not asked anybody's permission. There was no Moretti on it anywhere. 212 people came. Mrs. Abruzzo came in a car with a driver named Gino and complained about the air conditioning the whole way. Marco came in a suit he'd bought himself with money from a job he'd gotten himself in his second year at Hunter, and brought his mother, who cried in the kitchen because that was apparently just what she did in kitchens. Rosa ran the room like a floor manager, because she was one. Angela Ruffo, 66 years old, sat in the front with her reading glasses on her head because she was the executive director of records, and she had a desk and a door with her name on it, and 47 people had asked her a question that week. Elena Ricci did the ribbon. She was a citizen by then. She stood up in front of 212 people with a pair of scissors and could not get a word out for about 15 seconds. And then she said in English slowly, I sat in a hallway for 19 months. Nobody could hear me. She looked out at the room. Now there is a place where somebody hears you. That's all. That's the whole thing. Danny Belandi cut the ribbon with her because he could hold a pair of scissors again, and there was a photograph over the door of a man in 2004 with the wrong tie on. And at the back of the room, in a jacket that did not fit him anymore, stood a man who had been out of Otisville for 11 weeks and worked as a consultant for a construction firm in Queens for $81,000 a year on the books with a W-2. Sophia found him at the back. You're hiding, she said. I'm standing. You're standing at the back. Sophia, there are 200 people in this room, and about 40 of them lost money because of me, and about 9 of them lost more than that, Vincent said. The back's fine. The back's good. I like the back. Come up front. No. Vincent, absolutely not. So she took his hand and pulled him up the middle of that room in front of everybody, and he let her because he had learned exactly one thing in 14 months at Otisville, and it was that when Sophia Bennett takes your hand, you go. And 212 people watched Vincent Moretti stand up in front of them. He didn't want to speak. She made him. I'm not going to give a speech, he said. Give the speech, Danny called from the front, and the room laughed. Vincent Moretti stood there and looked at his own hands for a while. For 9 years, he said, every person in this city was afraid of my name. I spent all of it trying to build something that would make them stop. Buildings, leases, $400 million, 9 years, and I never once fixed it, and I want to tell you exactly why, because I finally understand it, and it took me 14 months in a room in Otisville. Nobody moved. Because I was trying to make people believe in me, he said. That's all it ever was. I wanted the whole city to look at Vincent Moretti and see something good. And a man who needs to be seen as good will sign 40 pieces of paper a week without reading one of them, because reading them is how you find out. That's not a monster. That's worse. That's a coward with a checkbook. He looked out at the room. Everyone in this city was afraid of my name, Vincent Moretti said. She was the only person who ever looked at me and told me the truth in my mother's language in a room I owned in front of my own uncle's driver, and she has never once taken it back. Not to my face, not to a federal prosecutor, not in a Honda on Route 17. She sent me to prison, and she drove 200 miles every second Saturday for 14 months to look at me while I was in it. That's the whole story. Everything else is real estate. 212 people were absolutely silent, and then Vincent Moretti turned around and looked at Sophia Bennett and smiled. "Now say it again," he said. Sophia started laughing. "In front of everybody. Especially in front of everybody. You want me to insult you at your own?" She waved a hand at the room. "This isn't even your building. Your name's not on anything in here." "That's the first true thing anybody's said about me in 9 years," Vincent said. "Say it again." And she said it. 3 words in her grandmother's dialect, the way Concetta Finelli said it on 72nd Street in 1974, the way she'd said it to a man in a wet coat in a restaurant that didn't exist anymore, and Angela Ruffo choked on her coffee, and Marco's mother gasped, and about 9 old Italians in the back of that room stood straight up out of their chairs. Vincent Moretti threw his head back and laughed. "Louder," he said. "Vincent, only if you're looking at me," he said. And she was. She was looking right at him, and she said it louder. And 212 people in a room on Court Street heard a woman curse the most feared man in New York, and heard him laugh like a boy, and that is how it ended. And that is exactly how it should have ended. Because the man everybody feared was never the man who threw the plate. He was the man who signed without reading for 6 years in a nice office with a coffee at 9:15 until one woman refused to be quiet in a room where quiet was the only thing anybody had ever bought. Vincent Moretti learned that true power was never making people afraid of you, and it was never making them believe